morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of County Commission meeting. Today's Tuesday, January 28th, approximately 9:30 in the morning. If you'd please take a moment and silence your cell phones, any other electronic devices you may have, so it does not interrupt the proceedings. I would like you all to join me in wishing Commissioner Lockhart a happy birthday. Today is her birthday. Happy birthday, Commissioner. We will begin with the invocation, which will be given by Reverend John Pierce, Jr. from Ethnos 360, and Commissioner Constantine will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend?
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me again. This is the first time I've ever been presented with roses. You really shouldn't have, and if you don't mind, if I take them home, it'll do a lot of good for me to get me out of the doghouse, I'm sure. But do I lead?
Fight you for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to pray or lead us in a happy birthday song to Amy, but we'll just pray. How about that, okay?
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to start this time off together today in prayer, addressing you as our Father. And as often is the case, children ask their father for things, and we know that it really pleased you when Solomon asked you for wisdom. And he asked that he might have wisdom for discernment and to distinguish between right and wrong. So, Lord, we're just asking you for wisdom for this body here that is going to be hearing different things today that they have to make decisions on. We pray for peace. We pray for understanding. We just thank you, Lord, so much for your bountiful gifts to us today. I'm just thinking, Lord, of all of those people who have been displaced in parts of Florida and North Carolina, and especially, Lord, the heartbreak of the fires in California. I just can't imagine not even having a roof over my head anymore. It's just a wonderful gift to have what we have. So, Lord, today we just commend these people to you. We ask that you bless them and guide them and direct them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. As we pledge allegiance, let us all remember we are one nation under God. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you would please stay standing. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Amy.
And it's a big
Happy
one.
birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It is. So I don't mind telling you all, I have hit
40.
I have hit 50. I've hit 50. So it's a good one. I have many friends who say this is the best decade ever. So looking forward to it.
So youngest up here.
By a wide margin.
Indeed. All right, next up is our awards and presentations. Commissioner Herr will read the first proclamation proclaiming Petty Officer Second Class Adam Zavardino, United States Navy of Seminole County's January Veteran of the Month. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, I move the following proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing United States Navy Petty Officer Second Class Adam Zavardino for his outstanding service to the United States and Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit and unmatched selflessness, reminding us there are few things more American than giving of ourselves to make a difference in the lives of others. And whereas throughout our country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures and even their lives on the line to valiantly defend our nation. And whereas for many service members, the sacrifice has ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms and the promise of liberty. And whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war, through their service they kept America strong. And whereas Petty Officer Adam Zavardino enlisted in the United States Navy on active duty in May of 1996 and separated from the Navy Reserves in May of 2004. He was the recipient of 2 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals and 1 Admiral Letter of Commendation. And whereas Petty Officer Adam Zavardino served as an aviation electronics technician aboard the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, completing multiple deployments, and earned an additional rating as a construction engineer or electrician, second class, for the latter half of his enlistment, with one deployment to the Middle East. Whereas Petty Officer Adam Zavardino has been a resident of Seminole County since 2004, he serves as the prior VFW commander in Chuliota and is currently the post quartermaster and adjutant for Winter Springs VFW Post 5405. His efforts have been recognized for the organization of community outreach events, including fundraiser and events honoring first responders in Seminole County. He is a proactive advocate for veterans' benefits, working closely with the Seminole County Veterans Services Office to better the lives of local veterans of all ages. And whereas Petty Officer Adam Zavardino has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States of America, the United States Navy, and Seminole County. Now therefore be it proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, our admiration, and our respect for Petty Officer Adam Zavardino for his outstanding service to the United States Navy and the residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation is presented to Petty Officer Second Class Adam Zavardino, along with our sincere congratulations, recognition as Seminole County's Veteran of the Month, adopted this 28th day of January 2025.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Passed unanimously. Congratulations, Petty Officer Zavardino. Please join us for a photo opportunity here at the floor. And if staff could get Mr. McIntyre, our investment advisor, queued up. Jeremiah got it. If you'd like to have a few words, please go to
I was told I had to say something, so. Most veterans are long-winded. I will not be. Thank you for this incredible honor. Being recognized as Seminole County Veteran of the Month is truly humbling. This recognition is just not about me. It's about all the brave men and women I served alongside and the sacrifices they made and the commitment we share to protecting the freedoms we hold dear. I'm also grateful to my family, my Seminole County community, and organizations like the VFW and American Legion, which continue to support and uplift veterans in meaningful ways. Together, we ensure that no veteran is ever forgotten or left behind, and that service to others remains a core value of our community. Thanks again for this incredible honor and recognizing the importance of veterans in Seminole County. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Okay, next up, we're going to have our County Investment Advisor report, Mr. Scott McIntyre. Do we have him with us? There we go. Good morning, Mr. McIntyre. I hope the weather's improved in Texas.
It is just fine in Texas. Thank you for that. Happy birthday. Okay, let's see what we got queued up for today. Of course, the markets are always, it's always something going on, and I guess DeepSeek is the latest, and we try to stay on top of that. It's not going to affect the portfolio in any way. U.S. economy is on solid ground, GDP near 3% for the past quarter. Unemployment is at 4.1%. Historically, that's good. Shelter costs are moving lower. That's key. That's important. The Fed did cut the overnight rate on December 18th between now and our last meeting by 25 basis points. They did signal a pause. There's a meeting today and tomorrow. Tomorrow they'll make an announcement. My thought, just for what it's worth, is that there's going to be a continued battle between Powell and Trump, because Trump would like to see interest rates lower, and the Fed is planning on pausing in January. Most people don't believe that they're going to begin to resume cutting rates in March. I think that's a little bit too early, but I do think that in May it's very reasonable. We should see that. But that's going to be a theme that I think is going to play out during the remainder of the year. It's going to be very interesting. Doggone it. So the two things to look at here are the green line there is the overall CPI rate, and that's moving higher because energy prices moved higher, and they're very volatile right now with what's going on in the Middle East. My expectation is that energy prices should, given the fact that we're going to try to produce more oil here in this country, and given the fact that there seems to be some relative peace in the Middle East for the time being, you'd expect that energy prices would come down. Shelter costs, cross your fingers. We saw 2 months in a row of the lowest annual increase in shelter costs since 2021. So that's key to bringing inflation down going forward. This is non-farm payrolls. The thing to look at here is November and December. Job growth was very solid, and of course that helped to contribute to bringing the unemployment rate down to 4.1%. This is, I'm not going to go into this, but this is for your information. There's a lot of information here. This is the latest Bloomberg survey. As of January 24th was a release on that. Top line is GDP, so 80-odd economists believe that GDP growth is going to be roughly 2%, so lower than it's been, but certainly a long way from recession for next year. I looked at these individual forecasts, and I think that economists are tending to cluster together so nobody looks like an outlier. I appreciate the ones who are brave and going out on a limb, but right now I don't think you can really take a whole lot from this. Looking at interest rates, these economists on the whole believe that the Fed will cut 2 times this year, so 50 basis points lower by the time we get to the end of this year. That is very, very evolving for what it's worth. And then looking at the 2-year note yield, it's expected to be below 4% by the time we get to the end of this year. So roughly 4.25-ish as of today. As usual, I try to look at the last several meetings and give you a sense of where interest rates have gone. So focusing again on the 24-month or the 2-year, yields are up a little bit, but again, they have been up and they have been down. And frankly, prior to the deep state disruption, DeepSeek disruption of the AI company, startup company, yields were a fair amount higher. They were really conducive to buying, I think. There was a flight to quality that seems to have eased. My guess is we'll kind of come to terms with this and yields will drift a little bit higher, but we certainly have a floor. As you can see, if you look over at the pool rates, which is where your liquid money is, the pool rates move with the Fed. So when the Fed cut, the pool rates move down. I would assume the pool rates will be fairly stable, just because the Fed's not expected to cut for a little while. But the idea right now, and kind of the overriding theme in terms of what my investment recommendation is going to be, is that you can come out of a pool rate and go into a longer treasury yield and give up very, very little. So we're able to extend the portfolio now, and I'm really looking at like the 3-year sector to lock in some 430, 435-ish, so that when we do start to see some more significant cuts, your income is more bolstered. There were a number of obviously you had your property tax money come in. There was a lot of investing that was done the last time. You can see over there in the left-hand column, not only where we thought those yields would be, but then ultimately where they did get invested. So they got invested at slightly higher yields, which is good. Recommended investments, I've got a pretty fair amount there because you've got quite a bit liquid right now. And as you can see, we're going out into 2028, actually some late 2028. Those are months when you typically need money, so we're positioning for your cash flows. We're also taking advantage of the fact that we can lock in, again, at yields very close to the pool yields and assure that in the event that there are big flight to qualities, in the event that Powell does aggressively cut rates, or this other scenario to keep in mind is that Trump will appoint another Fed chairman. That will be, Powell's term ends in first or early second quarter of 2026. So we're about 14 months away from Powell leaving. Now, theoretically, he could leave early. Most people don't think that he will, but another one will be appointed, and the person who will be appointed will certainly be prone to cut rates more than Powell has. So those are the recommendations. Again, this is, we've made recommendations to diversify in the past. This recommendation to me is to lock in longer in expectation of lower rates. Maybe not 3 months from now, but certainly within the next year or 18 months. And we want to protect as much of the income as we can. There is a lot here, too. The thing to look at, I think, are on the right-hand side, portfolio stats of the end of the year. The average yield on the portfolio was 4.56. Again, the 2-year right now is about 4.25. The mix between fixed and floating was roughly 72 to 28. Going forward with those recommendations to the end of January, that average maturity goes from 311 days to 450. So that's a pretty significant increase in terms of stretching the portfolio out. We really haven't had this opportunity before, so which I'm glad. You don't have a whole bunch of 3% lingers. What's in the portfolio now is well above 4%. So again, lengthening, the cost of that lengthening, if you look at that average yield, only goes from 456 to 452. These are just estimates, but a little bit of give up to stretch the portfolio out and assure ourselves longer. Still have ample liquidity. And the benchmark yield is converging, and that's going to continue to, well, it's not going to continue, it's going to go the other way because your benchmarks are going to add lower yields and shed higher yields on the other end. So, and since I always have a tendency to get crossways on how I ask for this, I will ask the chairman to help me with.
Yes, I'll be looking for a motion or any questions or inquiries. Commissioner Constantine?
Yes, thank you very much. Earlier this week, I had a meeting with the Florida Trust, and one of the things that was interesting to me is that Palm Beach County, there was, one of their financial directors who is on the advisory board mentioned that they had had a lot of activity recently with Israeli bonds, which are going for over 5%. And I was just wondering if we had looked into that.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question because I do know a fair amount about Israeli bonds, and we did look into it for the clerk's office. So what you'd be buying is the Jubilee series. You do it by application. They're not traded in the market. We do have other clients who buy those. Miami-Dade County has some in their portfolio. They're guaranteed by the nation of Israel. You're right. The last time I looked at the Jubilee bond 2-year note yield, it was above 5%. That is not something we buy. It's obviously, it's one of those sensitive topics that some people embrace and other people stay away from. It's obviously political. I don't see any issue with the credit. I will tell you that I believe that they recently went on credit watch negative for potential downgrade, or at least for evaluation, and I think that makes some sense whenever there is, political issues surrounding a nation. So the credit agencies just take a look. But that's a choice that you guys make. Typically, I will tell you that counties in Florida and in other states will buy. They will not buy tremendous amounts. They will buy whatever the magic number is for you. But that is a yield enhancement. Other people buy it, other counties buy it, other Florida entities buy it. Your policy, I sent some language to the clerk's office. Your policy will need to be slightly adjusted to allow for those. You can do those within your state statutes. It isn't, you can really do anything within your state statutes as long as you put it into your policy, but that's something you'll need to consider for your policy before we can proceed forward. And again, I have sent the language over.
Thank you. Anyone else?
He echoed my comment. If you guys want to do that, you can simply add it to your investment policy as an option. I think Palm Beach has is it 5%? It's a small percent in their investment portfolio. I'd have to go back and look, but some counties do that mainly in the South Florida area, so it is an option.
Makes sense. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to bring that up only because, I recall, there are certain states that when I say we, the state of Florida, does say you cannot invest in. But, Israel is one of our biggest supporters, vice versa. They're solid, and from something that I'm looking at, I don't see it as a political thing. If it was North Korea, yes. If it was Iran, yes. But if we're talking about 5% interest or more, and it is more, it's 5.2, 5.3, then that's an entire point, and I just think that is something that we should, you're the advisor. I respect that. I respect the clerk, but I'm just saying that's something. I wanted to bring it up so that you all will look at it as an opportunity. And as far as this board, I wouldn't think that any of us would have a problem in investing in Israel. But, if we have to change our policy, we would have to change our policy. But you said it's slight. It would just be.
Yeah, every category has a limitation of the maximum amount of the portfolio you can invest. So what I could do is take a look at the other ones and forward that to you for review, and what they do in Palm Beach.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lockhart.
Yeah, I think it's something that we ought to explore. It could be another tool in the toolbox. Thank you for
Commissioner Herr.
bringing it up.
I'll just be honest, I am a conservative investor, have always been a conservative investor. It is a country at war. Leave the politics out of it. Actually, investing in Israel because they're an ally is a political investment. And so I just want you all to know where my head is. This is the citizens' money, and I wouldn't put my money there, and I wouldn't put the citizens' money there for an additional 25% on, and we would be limited. The value of it would be very minimal impact to the portfolio if we even did it conservatively, and so it wouldn't move the needle.
Commissioner Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also echo what Commissioner Herr was talking about. The amount of money that would be put into this fund would be very minimum. The risk would be, in my opinion, not worth, as I would always say, the itch is not worth the scratch, so to speak. And I'd rather be more conservative than not, because it is not our money, and this is the public money, and I want to make sure that whatever we're doing is done conservatively. And so that would be my 2 cents.
And Mr. Chairman, all I want to do, if I can, is to give us every opportunity we can. And as I see ideas that come forth in my other work, I'm going to bring them up. And we have the choice of making them or not making them.
Sure. So my position is I don't mind having the conversation and look at that. And actually, if you're going to have the conversation, let's just go ahead and expand it outside of just that one entity. Personally, I tend to be not so much of a conservative investor myself, but this is the public's money. I would have zero interest in having investment in a war-torn area currently. It is a political decision, in my opinion. But beyond that, I want to applaud you, Mr. McIntyre, and your people. You have brought us a recommendation that is probably one of the most difficult for an investment advisor to make probably in the last couple decades, with what's currently going on not only in this country but around the world, and the rapidly moving pace of the uncertainty where this market actually is going to land. So I'm very pleased you've taken this conservative approach to suggest we lock in for a longer period of time. I think that's going to bode well for the taxpayers' money. Of course, a year from now, we may see rates, go much higher than that, but I don't think so. So I applaud your ability to migrate these rough waters that we're currently living in and where this ultimately lands. So with that, I'll be looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I'd like to make a motion to implement the recommendations of a financial advisor based on the report submitted today, and recommend the clerk implement said board's recommendation.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre.
Just
you
as a
all.
note, I'm looking up Palm Beach, their portfolio is up to, they have a 15% max rate on
Yeah.
Israeli bonds. I'll forward that info to
Yeah, well,
y'all.
Palm Beach County prints a lot of money, Seminole County doesn't. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Our next item up is our consent agenda. I will encourage anybody that's here that desires to speak on the consent agenda, find a form in the lobby, the yellow form, fill it out, and mark what item you desire to speak about. Get it to our clerk, Ms. Dominique, right up here at the front desk so that we can get you in here and let you speak on those items. I will now move to the county manager. Do we have any updates on today's agenda, Mr. County Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Yes, there's one change to the consent item, and that's item number 21 that I'd like to pull. I will be bringing that back to the board once we receive all the information, updated information on it. And then also this afternoon, we have received notification from the applicant on item number 33 that they are withdrawing that application, and that is the State Road 46 Lake Forest PD amendment, also known as Terracina. We will again announce that this afternoon, but just to let the public know, they are withdrawing it.
Okay, so
Not
thereby,
postponing it, withdrawing it.
therefore, there will be no hearing on that matter.
Correct.
Very good. All right, we will go to the county attorney, Ms. Kate Latour, to give the rules of engagement for public interaction on the consent items.
Thank you, Chairman. Florida law provides that members of the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard on propositions before the Board of County Commissioners, except when the board is acting on emergency or ministerial matters or conducting a meeting exempt from the requirements of the Sunshine Law. Individuals shall be permitted 3 minutes each for public comment or 6 minutes when the individual is an official representative of a formal association or group. The chairman may modify the maximum time for public comment at his sole discretion when appropriate. Public comments on quasi-judicial or other public hearing items will occur during the board's consideration of those items this afternoon. Public comments on pending procurement matters or on non-agenda items shall not be permitted at this time. Members of the public desiring to make public comment must fill out a speaker form and present the form to staff. Forms are available in the lobby. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Latour. The items are 3 through 30, less item 21. Is there any commissioner who desires to pull any item? Seeing none, we will go to public input. Ms. Dominique, is there any public speakers on any of the items today?
No, sir.
Okay, I will go back and close the public hearing portion and move to board action. Commissioner Herr?
Chairman, I move to approve item 3 through 30 with the removal of 21.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Next item up is we will go to our portion of the hearing, which is our Master Utilities Plan, Treatment of Transmission Mains. This will be presented by Johnny Edwards, the Interim Utilities Director, and his staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Happy birthday, Commissioner Lockhart. I appreciate the opportunity to come present to you today. This is the third work session regarding the Utilities Master Plan. I'm Johnny Edwards, the Interim Utilities Director. I'll make some opening and closing remarks today, and as we've done in prior work sessions, Steve Riley of Jacobs Engineering will present the majority of the presentation. I wanted to start off with written responses to prior work sessions. We have binders in the building that have been assembled and put together. We're putting the finishing touches on those now to provide to you. Just responses to comments from previous work sessions. At the last work session, water conservation was the subject of a lot of discussion. Environmental Services is leading those efforts, and I understand they will provide an update within the next couple of months to the board. Coordination with Public Works, Dig Once policy, that was discussed a lot. We have met with and will continue meeting with Public Works and other agencies to coordinate our efforts so that we're not trenching across a road that was recently resurfaced, for example. The surface water plant at Yankee Lake was also discussed quite a bit. As permitted, that is augmentation water for the reclaimed system. We are looking at the physical condition of that surface water plant, as well as treatment processes, as it hasn't been utilized since its construction, but rather minimally. We're not looking at treating potable water from this plant at this time, or anything like that beyond what is currently permitted. Just wanted to touch on those prior comments, and with that, I'll turn it over to Steve Riley.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, members of the board and staff. I'm Steve Riley, project manager with Jacobs Engineering, located at 200 South Orange Avenue in Orlando. Today, in our third workshop, I'm sorry, which way is the right button? There we go, sorry. Our agenda for today is, in our third workshop, is to go over the current state of the Utilities Department infrastructure for treatment and transmission, discuss the capacity, process, and renewal and replacement needs, and discuss the proposed master plan framework for the future treatment and transmission system for input from the board prior to us preparing the detailed master plan. At the high-level holistic view of your treatment and transmission system, the county's water utility system is entering its mature phase, and by that we mean components of it are over 50 years old. Of course, there are elements of it that are newer, but it's a system that has aging components, and renewal and replacement needs are coming to the forefront. Demands on capacity are secondary, as you'll see today. And as such, additional emphasis on operations and maintenance is needed moving forward. First up is water treatment. The County Utilities Department owns and operates water and wastewater treatment plants. We'll be reviewing the capacity needs, process needs, and renewal and replacement, abbreviated R&R needs. Water treatment plants. There are 5 water treatment plants owned and operated. In the upper left there in the northwest system is the Markham Regional Plant. In the center in blue, it's the northeast system with the Country Club water plant. In the lower left, the southwest system has the Linwood water plant. And your largest system in terms of customers is in green in the bottom, and that's the southeast system. It has the Southeast Regional Plant, which is your largest water treatment plant, and the Indian Hills water plant, which is your smallest. In our last work session, we went over some of the demand projections on your future water system. Our master plan goes through the next 20 years through 2045. On this chart here, you can see on the left the 5 water plants, their capacity as determined by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. In the third column, you'll see what their demands were last year, so there is some reserve capacity. We also reviewed in the last work session the need for increased conservation and reclaimed expansion in order to reduce your reliance on the upper Florida aquifer system, whose use is being curtailed throughout the Central Florida region. And when we factor in the conservation as laid out in your conservation plan and expansion of your reclaimed water system with the resulting reduced demand requirements on your water plants, we're projecting that none of the water plants would need to be expanded in the next 20 years. If you were not able to do any conservation or reclaimed expansion, 4 of the 5 plants would still be okay with a projected need to expand the Southeast Regional Plant in the early 2040s. In terms of process needs, the main contaminant of concern, you've probably heard about it, is PFAS, which is abbreviation for polyfluoroalkyl substances. There are hundreds of compounds in that group, but only 6 have been identified for regulation. And those new regulations with contaminant limits will require you to be in compliance by 2029. There's reason to believe that some of the existing processes that you invested in about 12 years ago will be able to remove this contaminant, and you're currently doing pilot testing at your Country Club water plant to see if that indeed is the case. In terms of renewal and replacement needs, of course, there are many needs in a complex, large utility of your size. But in rising to the top in some of the biggest future investments is going to be the need to replace the ozone equipment at 3 of the plants. It's a little over 12 years old now, due for replacement with more modern, more efficient units. And your SCADA system, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, which is basically the multiple processors and communication systems that you have that control these facilities, is in need for replacement with a more modern, flexible system that's easier to work on and more adaptable to your complex operations. Moving on to wastewater plants, the county owns and operates 2. The Yankee Lake facility in the northwest and the Greenwood Lakes facility in the northeast. In the southern southeast regional system, you collect and send wastewater to the City of Orlando Iron Bridge plant, which is actually located in Seminole County. And in the southwest system, any wastewater collected is sent to Altamont and Sunshine Water for processing. We reviewed some of the projected demands on your facilities moving forward. You can see the 2 wastewater plants you own and operate. At the Iron Bridge facility, you own 8.5 MGD of capacity there. You can see the 2025 flows. And also, when we look out at the projected 2045 flow, the Greenwood Lakes and Yankee Lake systems are connected through your piping and pump station system. And there's the ability through that system to divert flow from one plant to the other. Without doing any kind of flow diversion, we are projecting that your 2 plants would need to be expanded within the next 20 years. However, with flow diversion, diverting flow away from Greenwood Lakes to Yankee Lake, then only Yankee Lake would need to be expanded, and that works out well for y'all. The Greenwood Lakes facility is an older facility. It's located in a residential neighborhood. It's got wetlands around it and high voltage power lines on one side, and really it's not easy to expand, whereas the Yankee Lake facility has a ton of room, and it was designed to be expanded from 3.5 to 5 MGD, so that works out quite well in the future for y'all. This graph just depicts the diversion. On the left, the Greenwood Lakes plant. The black line is the projected demand moving forward, and the green line is the capacity. And the blue line is the diversion away. On the left, you can see that the flow into the Greenwood Lakes plant would stay below its permitted capacity with the diversion. And on the right side, you can see the Yankee Lake plant. And the diversion does require it to be expanded a little bit quicker, but it's readily expandable, and that could be fairly easily achieved. In terms of process needs, the Greenwood Lakes facility needs reliability improvements, and there's a study underway right now to determine if some of its processes can be relocated off-site to free up some space for those improvements. And as I mentioned, the Yankee Lake facility would need to be expanded from 3.5 to 5 MGD. The surface water plant takes water from the St. Johns River and treats it for the purpose of augmenting your reclaimed water supply system. There are extensive equipment needs there and renewal and replacement needs. And right now, it is undergoing assessment for both equipment and treatment needs in the future. Moving on to transmission and potable water. New infrastructure is going to be needed to serve developments in the southeast and northeast systems. And we do expect there may be some improvements needed to serve new development in your centers and corridor overlay areas as defined by the planning department. On the wastewater side, similarly, expansion to serve new development areas. In the southeast system, your collection system is actually part of the South Seminole North Orange County Wastewater Transmission Authority, affectionately abbreviated as SNOCWATA. And they are currently doing a master plan right now to determine what those improvement needs are going to be needed over the next 20 years. That study should be completed this year. In the Northeast system, we talked about flow diversion. Today, you all can't do that, but with the installation of a couple valves along the Reinhardt Road area on an existing force main, which has already been designed, you'll be able to achieve that diversion. In the Southwest, you're evaluating septic to sewer areas, and of course, that would entail construction of new gravity sewer mains and pump stations to serve that area. And countywide, again, we would be looking at expanded service and transmission of wastewater to serve the centers and corridor overlay areas. One of the rules that went into effect in Florida about 5 years ago was the Clean Waterways Act, and that affects all large wastewater utilities in Florida. And without getting into the details of all that, its basic intent is to reduce the risk of sewer overflows to the environment and our communities, and also to prevent leakage of water into the sewer system. The Utilities Department is currently working on meeting the requirements of that rule, and right here is a cover of one of the reports that was recently completed as required by that rule. I think, Johnny, you wanted to mention a couple things on that.
Thank you. I added a couple slides just to illustrate, the master plan is tying together other studies and other efforts that are being conducted. This is one example that Steve had illustrated in the previous slide. It is a risk-based assessment of our wastewater collection system. What this report looked at was, it assigned different categories. It had an inventory of all of our gravity mains, assigned different categories based on the age of the pipe material, the depth of installation. Operations had to respond to spot repairs on these pipes, and we ranked them based on the risk, the probability of failure, and we also couple that with the consequence of failure. Well, what happens if a pipe breaks or it clogs? Are we impacting a lot of customers, a few customers? Is it an environmentally sensitive area? So on the left, we look at the probability of failure, and on the right, it's the normalized risk. How bad would that be if it broke? Same kind of study on force mains, and again, the probability of failure and the risk on the right of consequence of failure. You see a lot of red. Those are the different categories. This is where we would focus our efforts on additional studies or assessments of the pipe or replacement to help reduce the risk on those pipelines.
Moving on to the last category of transmission, which is reclaimed water. In our last workshop session, we discussed in the Northwest system constructing retrofit phases 3 and 5 with the potential to save up to about 1 MGD. That reduces impacts on the aquifer system and your water treatment plants proportionately. In the Southeast, we're looking at expanding the reclaimed water system to high-use water areas, and we're also looking for dig-once opportunities. That would be a situation where a right-of-way was going to be disrupted by DOT or a county public works project or SNOC and look and see if it would be feasible to put reclaimed pipes in at that time. And similarly, in the Southwest system, following a dig-once policy in any areas where you tear up a right-of-way to put in new sewer mains, could be an opportunity to put in reclaim mains at the same time. With regards to pipe replacement, you do have some old pipes in your system. The intent is to replace those aging pipes when warranted, whether due to high breakage rates or due to the risk assessment that Johnny mentioned. The prioritization plan that we showed the cover of previously recommended inspection of about 3 miles of 50-year-old gravity sewer mains and also 23 miles of force mains. And again, pipe replacement opportunities may arise in coordination with the dig-once approach.
And I've listed here ongoing tests and assessments these are some of the efforts that we have, some of the investment being made to get our system, to address R&R needs, to get us to a state of being more proactive and less reactive with respect to the condition of the system. Some of these efforts, the results will be available and incorporated in the master plan. Others we're going to have to respond to at a later date. And like we've discussed before, it's a living document. We're going to get more information in the future and we need to respond to it. But these are, I just wanted to list several of the other studies that are, being considered, and the results will either be included in this master plan or updated subsequently.
So to review, our proposed framework for the master plan development with regards to future treatment needs are on the water treatment plant side. One water plant, the Southeast Regional Plant, may need to be expanded moving forward. Testing is underway to determine if the existing plants can meet emerging contaminants, upcoming regulated contaminants, and renewal and replacement needs will be included, with the major needs being ozone system replacement and SCADA upgrades. On the wastewater treatment side, one treatment plant may need to be expanded in the next 20 years, the Yankee Lake plant. Likewise, there are SCADA improvement needs on the wastewater side. And with the ongoing study of the surface water plant, will incorporate process improvements and renewal and replacement needs. Future transmission, expansion of service to serve new developments, both in water and wastewater. On the wastewater side, diversion to Yankee Lake to limit your expansion needs to one facility. Improving reliability of the system to reduce the risk of sewage releases, and incorporation of septic to sewer projects. On the reclaimed water transmission side, construction of reclaimed retrofit projects in the Northwest, and evaluation of opportunities to expand the reclaimed transmission in the Southeast. And for all transmission projects, pursuit of dig once opportunities and replacement of aging pipes when warranted.
All right, and I wanted to put the schedule up in conclusion. This is the schedule for work sessions that we've been working with for the past several months. I would call attention to the April 2025 CIP. We're probably going to push that back a month or two just because it's a tremendous lift, and that would give us more time to complete some of the studies that I listed before to include those results in the master plan. But we will hold firm to the September 2025 final master plan report. And with that, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards, and thank you, Mr. Rowley. Any specific questions of the consultant or Mr. Edwards? I'll start with Commissioner Herr and work our way down the dais.
Thank you for a really well-done presentation. I just want to point out that the pipe replacement, the fact that we have 50-year-old pipes, that's so old. So old.
But it's like fine wine, it ages with time.
That's right.
We got to go with that.
Yeah.
In the summation, I just want to point out that the last part of the presentation was around ongoing assessment to move from reactive to proactive, and it didn't make the summation. And I want to make sure it makes the plan. So we need to move from our current state to the new state, and unless it's actually documented and put in the final plan, we may never do that. And I am a huge proponent of taking care of what we've already paid for, so I love the focus on actually taking care of what we've already paid for, using it to its maximum capacity, moving stuff around into where we have capacity. I think it's fabulous, with the addition of moving from reactive to proactive, absolutely stated somewhere, as often as we say the word holistic. Okay. Which is good. It's good that it's holistic. And dashboards, yes.
Commissioner Delarey.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Commissioner Hurst stated. I think the reactive and proactive needs to be defined in the beginning pages of every report that we have, as well as the conclusion, so that it's throughout the whole report. But very well done. I do have a couple of questions. I know I've talked about this in the past, the overall cups of different utilities in the surrounding areas, to see how they affect us, because they will affect our drawdown, especially if they're being overpumped. And I know there are some areas that could potentially be doing that. And so that we just want to make sure that the public is aware of what's happening throughout Seminole County, in not just our utility, but other utilities. And then I'd like to have some dialogue in your report, but not today, about how the district will maybe addressing our CUP in the future. Because we all know that they will be having a lot of input on our CUP as we move closer to those deadlines. And then, in the briefing that I had, we talked about the SCIDR and that how it's Motorola base. We do have Motorola with our first responders, and I just want to make sure if there's any way that we can capitalize on both entities to get what's ever best for the community. May not be, because I know they're two different divisions, but it's worth to have dialogue on that front as well. When it talks about reuse, I know we talked about the expanding in the northwest category of the county. I definitely think that we need to be more proactive in that, and that will pay back big dividends for us. And then I'd also like to talk about in 2015, Senator David Simmons had Senate Bill 552. We didn't talk about that at all. At somewhere in these reports, we need to be talking about that. It talks about the springs. A lot of effort was put into that, but I don't see much coming out of it, and I want to make sure that that's in our forefront as well. We did talk about at some point looking at our existing needs. I want to make sure that whenever we do put reservations in place for both water and sewer from our customers, that they're actually using that, because sometimes it's over committed or not used. And I want to make sure that we're looking at that holistically, so that we are taking all our assets into account and not just what was assumed in the beginning. And you did talk about a little bit about Yankee Lake and about looking at whatever we're doing there. I think that's great, and I think that's what needs to happen, but also make sure that there's a caveat in there, because a lot of Yankee Lake has to do with the scrub jays, and I just want to make sure that we're protecting our fair-feathered friends. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lockhart.
Great job. Looking forward to the final plan. This has been many, many years in the making, and it's exciting to see coming together, and certainly proactive shift in gears will be a good thing. I did appreciate very much in our briefing when you shared with me about the water that we're currently moving down Reinhardt from north to south, that we can just turn it around and send it back up from south to north. Didn't realize how much we are, with the bulk of that water, apparently it is actually closer for it in some ways to go up to Yankee Lake. Is that what you shared?
The distances are similar, but yeah, fortunately, with your pump station and piping configurations, it's just a matter of installing a couple valves on a force main on Reinhardt Road, and then simply closing those valves, and then you can just direct the flow to the north to your Yankee Lake facility.
And that sounds so simple. I'm sure it's not quite, I mean, maybe in engineer world, it's a simple thing. What's the time frame and what's the disruption for something like that for the general public? Will they even notice it's happening?
Yeah, well, so I would say, for the general public, probably not. There are other pump stations that are connected to the force mains that may experience different pressures when we redirect the flow, so we would have to work with maybe the owners of those pump stations so that they're not adversely impacted. We also want to meter that flow, so right now we're talking to Duke Power because the location that we'd like for a wastewater meter is in an easement. They have easement considerations. operation, so we're trying to coordinate with them to get a meter in, and then we'll have a project ready to go out on the street to install the valves and meter.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you very much. It's good to see the continued progress, as all of the commissioners have already indicated. I believe that most of the things that I talked about in our in my update that I received during the past week have been talked about, but just to, again, reiterate a couple of things, I think there is an opportunity right now because of some of the things that are going on with the relationship with Apopka and Altamont Springs with the reclaimed water. It's good to see that you all are working with them, continue to work with them on the possibility of getting some of that reclaimed water. There has been a great deal of discussion recently, and I think it's going to continue to get to the boiling point about the consumptive use permits and the length of time. So, and then that just doesn't affect us, it affects everybody, obviously, especially in the private sector, and people kind of locking up the amount of water that they can receive, and thereby hurting others that cannot get some water. So I think that that's going to be a discussion that's going to continue and something that's going to affect us. And the last thing I want to continue to reiterate, I really believe one of the greatest opportunities in conservation is rewarding in the rates conservation users and not rewarding those that use more water. So, I think that needs to be considered in the reflection of rates. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've got one more question, if I may.
Make it quick, Commissioner DeLaurie. Go ahead.
It'll be quick. I know that the surrounding utilities different entities keep on adjusting the utility rates. Can you give us an overall graph or chart about the surrounding areas in Seminole County only, about what the utility rates are?
Yeah, we can, every year when we talk to our rate consultants, that is a graphic that they will provide to us, and we'll have that within the next couple of months, and just make sure we see where we fall in line with the others.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got a couple inquiries, and I'm glad to see we have the dig once concept, but here's my concern. Are we truly coordinating with all departments and all other public utilities? And I bring this up only because at the last BCC hearing, there was a project that was continued, and I started to dig into it, only to find out that there had been 3 studies over the last 15 years that identified some drainage right away that the county may need on a particular properties or properties that was never acted upon. And now, are we considering all those types of things in this, when we do this dig once scenario? How are we making sure that all previous studies that were done are included in the scope of work that you are considering for the dig once provision? And I think that's something we've got to really wrestle. I don't think either one of you can answer. I think that's more of a county manager and staff question, and that has to do with studies that have already been done that have either been put on the shelf, not acted upon, or not considered by other departments, and the cross-pollination on how those things could actually truly be a dig once policy. So that's one concern I have, to make sure we have that multi-department coordination, and we truly have those studies that are now 7, 10, 15 years old that have never been acted upon, and whether truly need to be updated or whether they actually are going to be done at some juncture. And for the record, I want to make sure the impact of the costs of ultimately what we do is we do the O&M and updates and all this items. Is it all going to fall on the ratepayers or the general taxpayer in Seminole County? And what portion thereof would do so? And what portions are included as part of the bond covenants on some of the utilities? And make sure that we are cross-connecting the rate studies with the master plan to make sure that we are moving forward with that. And so there's not this big gap or lag in rates to the payers. And then also, I want to make sure that we're talking to all the cities in Seminole County and our neighbors. You probably are aware there's one city that has been struggling with their wastewater system, and how we may have discussion on how it benefits the community as a whole if we consider cross connections and so forth with the cities, or if they have needs in the future, or we have needs and we work together. I'd like to see some part of this study either address that from the standpoint of there doesn't appear to be any need or future need to help any of the cities, and there doesn't appear to be any need that the county is going to need help from some of the cities, and that kind of dialogue broken down. Finally, when it gets to the cup, I would also like our staff and consultant to look at FUGWA. FUGWA is the Florida Utilities that has taken over the U.S. water supply out towards Commissioner Gloria's district and my district. The contract says the county has the first right of refusal to that utility, which includes a significant cup, and how that may play a role in the future of the water needs here in Seminole County would be great. But great work, great improvements, appreciate staff and management getting to this point, because it's been several years getting here. So bravo, good work, and I appreciate all the work that you all are doing. But those are the things I have concerns with, so thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, real quick, as Mr. Edwards mentioned in the beginning, we put our heads together and we thought about this over the weekend, that we're going to provide each of your offices a binder of each of these presentations, work sessions that we have been presenting to you, as well as the questions and the inquiries that you have asked. They'll be attached to that. We'll hand those to your offices, and they'll be updated at each of these. So at the final September meeting, when we do the final report, you'll have a full binder of everything in there, just to ensure we've covered and checked all the boxes that you all have requested of us as well.
Great. If I could have mine electronic, I don't need a binder.
Sure,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Commissioner Herr, Commissioner, let's go on right down the aisle.
I think the electronic version needs to be made available to all of us. Happy to have the binder as well.
Mr. Chairman, if you're going to talk about Fugler and the eastern part of the county, I'm not trying to get into it today, but at some point you're going to need to look at salt intrusion, and I know you know this, Steve, and it plays a big important role out there. So just make sure that that's on the radar if you're going to be discussing it.
Mr. Lockhart? Mr. Constantine? Nothing else? Anybody here from the public that needs to make a comment on this?
No, sir.
Seeing none? Thank you both very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item up, we will move to our next work session item, which is code enforcement kickoff presentation. Mr. Mike Rhodes.
Okay, thanks. Commissioners, good morning. I want to assure you from the outset that even though you won't see it in a slide, I'm going to hopefully have you all teed up by October 1st to have a proactive code enforcement operation that deals with code enforcement issues holistically, and you have a performance-oriented system of code enforcement with dashboards.
All right, Mike.
Presentation done.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
So I do want to take you through, just very quickly, the transition timeline, key action items, proposed organization and budget, and outstanding factors and recommendations for next steps. These are things that you all asked for when we presented this back in September, at the end of September of last year, and we want to update you on right now. I provided a Gantt chart. I like Gantt charts. They ensure a little bit of accountability and give you kind of a picture of where we're going. Focus for now on the blue dot. That's today. We are into code development and code amendments that we'll be talking about in a little bit. But the upshot of the Gantt chart is a timeline, hopefully, to get us through for implementation of the code enforcement setup by October 1st. And the chart actually takes us through the end of July, so it's not everything. And obviously, you've got some big hurdles and steps ahead as it relates to the budget process that are also part of this chart and what we'll talk about.
The key action items I had, obviously, we talked at the first meeting about the importance of implementing International Property Maintenance Code. Kate and her team are already working on that. We hope to have that back in front of you at the end of February or early March, just depending upon how things go. We also have code amendments that need to be made to Chapter 95 and Chapter 53 that deal with the process aspects of code enforcement. We hope to have those back in front of you in an April-May timeframe. And ideally, we can start recruiting for a division manager to see this whole process through and begin some of the other work that needs to be done as far as, excuse me, firming up a budget, setting up the infrastructure for the staff, setting up the IT platform is an essential part of this. We've got to get that done. Working on facilities, where are we going to put these folks when they do transition over, and then facilitating the transition from the sheriff's office over to the BCC for the staff. But again, our intention is to launch the new division by October 1st and have everything ready to go for you. We've shared with you a proposed budget. We're working with HR on firming up numbers for this, but at the moment we think that we're a little over $1 million in total. There are some staffing and budget dependencies, obviously, that relate to the number of net new positions. You could have no net new positions. You could have 2 net new positions. A lot's just going to depend upon the transition between the sheriff's office over to the BCC. There are a number of positions now that are shown in the new organization that are already part of BCC staffing, and that includes most of the admin support, and in some respects, possibly a couple of the officer positions. The one thing I'd also like to call to your attention is on the contractual services. I am recommending that you bump your contractual services up in order to more efficiently facilitate your abatements. Some of that is contingent upon your willingness to move those abatements over to more of an administrative process rather than having to bring them before the BCC every time. But in the event we can do that more efficiently, I think there's also an opportunity to address some of these things in a way that's going to be of great benefit to your residents. The proposed organization is pretty straightforward. I do recommend that the operation be established under development services. There's just a relationship there that's always going to be essential. As we develop the new software platform, remember that you all selected Excel at the end of August to be the development services platform for planning, permitting, and code enforcement. Code enforcement was an element of it, and I think having everybody on the same platform within the same department is going to be of great benefit. I am recommending 4 code enforcement officers initially, and I know that might bring some questions to you to talk about, but I can tell you that with some better budget and performance measures, if 4 is not enough, you're going to know soon enough, and if 4 is too many, you're also going to know. But we want to provide you with those budget and performance measures as a part of this package going forward, so that you can make well-informed decisions if you do decide to make adjustments to the program after October 1st. Outstanding factors within this transition. Again, the interim software platform. You have an existing platform now. Some of the code enforcement activity is actually tracked in there between permitting and planning. So adding in the additional property maintenance activities and other things is not going to be a big lift, but that does need to occur in order to provide us, again, with some at least initial tracking and performance measures. And then obviously when the new system is set up, and again, code enforcement is something that was anticipated, but when the new system is set up, we'll be able to transition from the old to the new without too much headache, and hopefully provide you again with the dashboards, the transparency,
the ability for residents to get complaints in and get updates on cases as the cases move through the process should be a lot easier, particularly in the new setup. The code revisions and the timing and extent of those revisions are, in most respects, in your hands. There are a lot of things to talk about. There are local amendments that will need to be made in order to account for the unique things about Seminole County that you all want to preserve, maintain, or do differently than neighboring cities and counties. The IPMC is one of those things. It's a great vehicle for a lot of things, but when it comes to deciding how you want it to be set up, that's something that you all are going to have to discuss. We'll certainly present recommendations and options for you, but you have some things that are unique now in what you do, and we want to make sure that we account for those things as we make those code changes going forward. And I'm not assuming that you're all of one voice when it comes to that. So again, that timing is going to be in large part up to you all. The staff transition from the sheriff's office, I would tell you just publicly, it's been great to work with them so far. They've been very, very helpful in kind of talking through some of the details here. We've had some good meetings. Just one small, it's not a small example, it's a significant example. They've already committed to providing us with the vehicles that they have. They've recently purchased vehicles for code enforcement. I think most of their vehicles are no more than 2 years old. And the ability to get those vehicles and have those on day one is absolutely essential, because as you all know, when if you're going out to purchase new fleet vehicles now, the turnaround is not that great. So having vehicles available to us right away is just a great help. So next steps, again, we want to bring you these code amendments over the next couple of months. Budget planning and budgeting concurrent with your existing budget cycle is something that it goes without saying. I mean, nothing happens without you all going through that process and approving it. But once we get a good sense of where that's headed, we like to begin with recruiting and that staff transition. There are some things that we need to be able to do with the sheriff's office and with our own HR and working through the particulars of benefits and PTO and all that good stuff. So those are things that we're looking at now. But again, assuming we get the green light to move forward with these things, that's work that we will be conducting over the summer and into the fall. Again, with an eye towards commencing code enforcement operations under the BCC effective October 1st. So with that, I will hand it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Yes, sir.
We'll start with Commissioner Constantine and come down the dais for any questions or interactions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rhodes, thank you. I appreciate very much this, because I don't think there's anything in my office that we get more phone calls on than code enforcement. And as we've talked together many times, the importance of the efficiency and effectiveness of knowing where to go to get answers, and then knowing who is going to get out there and check on the concern with those complaints that come in and are recognized when a person is willing to put their name out there, which they're required to do. So thank you very much. In considering all of this, I saw the $1,009,000. Is any of that going to be something that we can look at that is coming from the sheriff's office to to the general revenue to pay for this? Since they've been doing this, and we're talking about personnel and car, trucks, vehicles, whatever, what kind of dollars may we see from there to coming into our budget?
And I can answer that one. I don't put you on the spot.
Thank you, Darren.
I've already, thank you, Commissioner Wade, and I knew that question was going to be coming up at some point. I've already been in communication with the sheriff's office. The sheriff and I have already talked about this. We are going to work that out through the budget process, so you all will get an update that, probably May, June about that. So the idea would be Ideally, whatever we have, the board has given the sheriff for code enforcement operations would come back to the board, and so that's what we are working through. But the sheriff immediately was, whatever you need, Darren, we'll make that transition smooth and get you what you need, and then he offered those vehicles up right away. So they're being, as Mike said, they're being very good in this transition period.
We'll wait for the full answer during the budget session. Thank you.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Thank you for all of your work. I know this is your passion. I don't know many people whose passion would be code enforcement, but if we were going to find someone, to find you, I think was absolutely incredible. So thank you for your willingness to work with us on this. It's a big undertaking. One of the things that, and I love the timeline, love the plan, think there are some tweaks along the way we'll probably figure out that we need to do. But one of the things that has come to my attention multiple times over the last several years is having a process for, and this is an example of why development services and it's so important that it be coordinated. When you have a property in an area that is hard to get investment in to begin with, and there's a code enforcement lien against that property, and someone wants to come in and revitalize that property, buy the property, rehab it, even if there's a bunch of liens on it. Right now, the way the process is set up, it's buyer beware. You knew the liens were there, and then they make the investment, they do the work, and it's sort of a catch. It's a hard thing. How do you get people to invest to revitalize neighborhoods when there are liens on properties if we don't have a process for them to remove the liens? So I'm hopeful that through this process, and I know there's been some conversations that have been had about this, but I'd love a suggested format for how we can hold people accountable who need to be held accountable and still encourage investment in communities that may have an abundance of code enforcement violations in them.
And I understand that. I think one of the things that the county's going to want to take a look at some point is entering into settlement agreements that are binding but don't have the timeline that's usually associated with having to come to a BCC meeting every single time. And right now, that's kind of the way you've got it set up. I'm not sure what kind of legal authority you have for the county manager, the county attorney to settle, but I think those are things and things we're taking a look at to give you an opportunity to more timely work through some of these issues and facilitate that reinvestment and correction of the code violations. And you can structure those agreements with benchmarks that I think get you where you want to go. And again, it's one of those aspects perhaps of Chapter 53 that as you all think about it, maybe if there's a willingness to take your hands off the wheel a little bit, invest some authority with your staff to try to get things done more quickly, it might be in your interest to do that.
I heard that message loud and clear. Thank you. I think that's very important that you said that because we need to be aware of that. Thank you.
Commissioner Delory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, well done, as always. I think you present very well, and you've given a lot of thought and a lot of effort into this, so thank you for that. We don't know yet who's going to be transferring over, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll know that at some date and time per your chart.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I appreciate getting the 25, 26 estimated budget, but also be nice to see if there's an anticipated budget for 26, 27, because there's going to be some different costs between those, that's all, just so that we're fully prepared.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Hurd?
Thank you. Great presentation. I think the piece of this that is difficult to understand from the material provided is the from and to. And so in every category, I think what we need to see is, for example, you're proposing 4 officers. What do we have now? I'd like to know what we're moving from and to, regardless of whether people are moving. That's a whole separate, we need to know that as well. And from a budget perspective, it just like Commissioner Constantine asked, we're proposing $1 million, but we're spending something now, and what is transitioning back? We need to see all of that in that format. Same with the amendments that are going to come back to us, because I think we need to definitely understand what it is we have now, what you're recommending, and why. And we need to be able to go through each one with a tick mark, or we are going to talk about this for 4 years, just by my observation. And then the last piece that I simply don't understand, I'm sure there's really good reason for, is that we're going to transition this into our old software, make adjustments to that, and then transition it into the new software. And I'd like to know if we can't reorder the operation of the new software installation to say, push this to the front of that chain, so we're not doing this twice.
I can answer that one right out of the gate. The contract with your vendor provides a single go-live date. So the contract as it's set up currently has you getting everybody developed, and there's a timeline for development of all of the different modules, the different aspects of the software. The code enforcement design begins in March. So it's pretty well laid out over all the requirements. But it does call for a single go-live date. And I know that there are some efficiencies for the county and for the vendor in that regard. When it comes to support and training and a lot of other aspects of that particular software implementation. I will tell you what I see, at least in your existing software, is adequate for a period of time, and it will not require, I don't believe, a big lift in order to make it functional for us. Functional doesn't get us everything we want, but I can tell you right now, there is the system the sheriff's office has really doesn't translate into anything that we do here at the BCC. And there really isn't another option other than to go back to paper and Excel spreadsheets, and I know that that's not going to be anything we want to do. So it's not ideal for sure, but I do think that it's something that can be done without a whole lot of effort and very minimal, if any, expense. And maybe just quickly to your point on the from and to part, particularly as it relates to the positions. One of the things that I think you all know is that in Chapter 53 and certainly in your admin code, you define 21 positions, remember, that have code enforcement responsibilities. And for a lot of those positions, most of those positions, code enforcement responsibility is a percentage, and a relatively small percentage, I would say, of everything they do. And so putting all those pieces together, we can take a stab at it for sure. But what I would also tell you is that, October 1st, 100% of all this staff's time is going to be dedicated to code enforcement. And so when it comes to knowing who to call or who to go to, it's going to be one organization, one division manager, and you won't have to wonder who's responsible anymore.
That's worth a cheer.
Yes.
Well,
Wonderful.
I'm good with fractions.
Okay.
So if it's a 0.5 of a FTE that's sitting at the sheriff's office, and we're going to leave the human there, so clearly we can't take part of the human, then it's a 0.5 up in that staffing, and we're going up a 1. So that's,
I understand.
I'm good with fractions.
Okay. I understand. Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Yep, thank you.
Much of what already has been said, I concur with, and I do believe in bringing efficiencies to Commissioner Lockhart's point of these 15 years worth of penalties and fines and all the things that with these efficiencies, we can move through this much more efficient to get those on the market in those type scenarios much quicker. So I'm looking forward to that. I would like to spend some time and really dig into, I've just done my own calculations, just cursory. I don't think $1 million is the real cost. I think it's more than that. And to the point of coming over from the sheriff's department on how that's going to transition from a cost perspective. I know we're working with the sheriff. I know we're having those dialogues. I know he's a willing partner to make all this happen. But we need to look at that real close from FTEs and the true cost. I mean, arguably, we paid for the cars that are coming back to us anyway. as part of the budget to the sheriff.
Absolutely.
As we should have. So I think we really got to dig down, but I think that number is well north of 1 million to get started. But I'd like to dig into that and understand where our people are coming from with that real number and vetting that out. I also suspect initially the costs are going to ramp up and then maybe flatten out the second, third, and fourth year as things sort of settle in and everybody's in a groove. Finally, I think Commissioner Herr's point with the staffing, I'm curious to know, and I don't need to know right now, you got 5 districts, you're going to have 4 code enforcement officers. Arguably, you've got my district, which is a lot of open space or a lot of distances, and you've got other districts that are very populated and condensed districts. So I wonder, I'd like to see an expectation of what it looks like in your mind or what typically would happen in the more urban areas versus the more rural areas on contact or in the proactive daily workings of that code enforcement officer and who's going to overlap. Does that mean one officer is going to be at Commissioner Delary's in my district, or they're going to overlap throughout the whole county? I'd like to understand that just a little bit better.
Okay.
But don't need no answers right now.
Gotcha.
Anything else? Great work. I think we're all glad to see this moving forward. Our citizens will be happier, I suspect, as we're able to give them better answers and more efficient answers instead of trying to find out which department is in charge of what and how to get it through and be done with that. So thank you very much for your input. Anyone here for the public to speak on this matter?
No, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else for the good order before we dismiss to the afternoon? Seeing none, we'll be dismissed until 1:30 this afternoon.